Hi, and welcome to our product update, our regular format in which we talk about the updates that we do to our product. And with me is our product manager, Jelle, as always. Hi, Jelle.
Hi there, guys.
And in this edition, we're going to talk about lift and shift and how we support lift and shift scenarios in our product now. Because at our customers, we see that lift and shift is a big part of reaching their strategic cloud adoption goals. And we're going to start with Azure and the support of resource groups.
Exactly. So as of last release, we now support Azure Resource Group as a full platform type in meshStack. So previously we already had support for Azure Subscriptions, and now we actually also support Azure Resource Groups, which are kind of a different abstraction level in Azure. I'll show you a bit later how it works exactly, but I first want to start with creating a new Azure Resource Group via meshStack. So we'll go ahead and create a new mesh project. That's something a lot of people do all the time. So let's give it a name. We give it some tags. I'll show you again later how that works in Azure. Just a few examples. We select the payment method, and here is where the magic happens. We now can pick a new type of platform, the Azure Resource Group. You can see it by the icon and also by the name. We'll go ahead and pick a landing zone that's fit for this new tenant and add me on the project. Save that. And just checking if everything's correct. And we'll go ahead and create the Azure Resource Group, the project with the Azure Resource Group. So this will take a while now, and we'll get back to you when the replication has finished.
12 seconds later.
Okay, so that only took a few seconds actually, and we're back. meshStack replicated what we put in Azure. And Jelle, can you show us what it looks like?
Yes, so as you see, we have the project here, which we just created, and in there is now the new Azure Resource Group tenant. It says replication successful, luckily. So we're just gonna go into Azure, and I'll show you a little bit about how it now worked in the backend. So we can click here, sign into Azure portal, which will take us to the actual Azure environment. And as you can see here, there is now a new Azure Resource Group. A few details that I want to show you guys is we now actually also have tags applied directly on this Azure Resource Group as we defined before. So as you can see, we have the project and the customer, just so we know kind of who owns this particular entity in Azure. And we also have these two tags that I filled in before, so confidentiality and business unit. That's one feature that meshStack offers across actually all kinds of cloud platforms. Another one, which is very important, is assigning people. So when I go to the identity and access management setup in Azure, I just quickly show you, my new assigned roles. So we have here a new, I just have to enlarge this. We have a new group created here, videodemo.admin, and as I before assigned myself the admin role, I will now be in this group. So we go to members, and as you can see, my user is in there correctly replicated. And just to show you again with what role, this is defined in the landing zone, it's with the contributor role. So I can now, or me and even potentially my team is now ready to contribute and do interesting cloud stuff in Azure.
Okay, cool. Thanks. The resource groups play a bigger role in lift and shift scenarios than subscriptions, right? A lot of organizations try to, in the beginning of their cloud transformation, kind of replicate their data center within Azure, and they do this with resource groups to kind of mimic the data center. That's why we now have the resource group creation in meshStack, but also we can import already existing resource groups.
Yeah, that's right. We actually always offer this for all kinds of platforms. I mean, often people will come in and they might already have some cloud projects running. So we offer some importing capabilities. At the moment, this is via our API. Just quickly show you that. So we have a meshTenant object. The meshTenant, right, that's our kind of multi-cloud representation of a cloud project. So in Azure, this could be then a subscription. It could be a Azure Resource Group as of now. And for example, in AWS, it would be an account. So If we would want to import a tenant of the type Azure Resource Group, what we would do is we would pretty much copy over this YAML or JSON if that's what you prefer. You enter the following details: which project owns this tenant, which customer owns this tenant, for which platform does it belong to, and then the local ID. And within here, you would enter the actual identifier of that particular Azure Resource Group, and if everything's correct and you send the request to the API, that Azure Resource Group would be imported into meshStack.
Cool. And since we're talking about lift and shift scenarios, virtual machines are important, and all kind of other services like blob storage and so on. And we also implemented a feature that supports lift and shift scenarios with attached services like VMs. Can you show us what that means?
Exactly, that's a very good point. Yeah, as you mentioned before, people are often replicating their data centers, especially when you're just dealing with virtual machines kind of workload. And the Azure Resource Group is one thing, but we really now support an end-to-end capability, which I want to show you as well. So we'll go to the admin area and we'll edit the landing zone that we used before. So if we go to the landing zones and we pick our Azure Resource Group landing zone, what's now new, and by the way, this actually applies to all platforms in meshStack. It's just that we're going to show you the Azure Resource Group as an example, but you can use this across all clouds actually, is to attach services to your landing zone. So what we, what Wulf mentioned before, is we want to support a virtual machine use case. So what we want to do here is we actually want to kind of recommend people to use our own virtual machine service. So we could, right, common use case, have a golden VM, so a virtual machine recommended by the organization, and we can attach this to the landing zone. So what we do is we add service. We already prepared a virtual machine service in the background, and we say, okay, that's optional. And what's also cool is for some use cases, we can also add required services to the landing zone. So let's add a concourse pipeline, which should be required, which means when the user creates the project, they actually have to use the service. There's no way to avoid it. They will get it included in their project. So once we added these two services to this landing zone, we'll save it. And we'll actually run through the exact same process again, this time including these services. So let's call it another name. Again, going through the tags. And when we get to that actual platform selection, you will now see that something changed. So we're going to pick landing zone. It's the same one that I edited before. And now we have a new tenant services configuration screen. So as you can see, the concourse is required, so there's no way to avoid it. It also wants me to actually configure it. So I'll pick a plan, click done. And then the virtual machine, which we added, is optional. So I could already continue now if I want. But I will actually go ahead and pick it. So I click the little checkbox here. It now wants me to set up the right configuration. So we'll just fill that in. Enter the parameters. The parameters, by the way, are given by the owner of the service. So these could be empty, but in this case, the owner of the virtual machine service actually wants us to enter these details. There are also some regex and such included. And once everything's green, I can click done, and I can continue with my workflow as usual. And this is really nice because in the past, you'd actually, after creating the tenant, now have to go into some other screens and fill in some other details about actually getting these services. And this is now a nice and cohesive experience. So customer users will find this a lot more intuitive. It's much more easy to find the things that you're looking for and just in general speed up the process of creating a new virtual machine project, for example.
So in general, it means you can bundle up any services with the landing zone for any platform. But in our specific case that we showed, if you want to do lift and shift on Azure, the Cloud Foundation team, like the central cloud team, they can pre-bundle services in a landing zone and offer that to application teams that might not be too familiar with Azure. They just want to lift and shift their application onto Azure, And with these pre-bundled services, they can get their virtual machine, their storage, everything they need, and don't have to think too much about like all the other stuff that's out there in Azure, and can think about that later, right? That's the idea behind it.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. There might be some people that do not really like the cloud native way of working, which is fine in case you're already used to more of the virtual machine landscape in the past. And yeah, by having these capabilities now in the product, we really are able to provide such an experience for these kind of people.
Yeah, but still the path is open to using all the other services that are there and to refactoring.
Exactly,
and
yeah,
everything.
as you can see, as you saw before, right, I click on console access and I would directly go into Azure portal and I could do anything else that I might be interested in.
Okay, cool. Thank you for showing that. And the last item, the last update on our list is a filter function. So
yes, just
what are
a
we
small
talking about?
delighter. Yeah, right. Just a small delighter for those that are longer with us. If you have a lot of mesh platforms, which you will find in the screen, it could get a little bit messy sometimes to find what you're looking for. You might have 30 OpenShift clusters, 5 different types of Azure platforms, and maybe even some AKS clusters on Azure. It could get quite hectic. And to support these people, we now finally have filtering in the mesh platform area. So for example, if I want to look for a particular OpenShift cluster, just type in its name and it will pop right up.
Cool. Convenient, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that concludes our product update this time. You can sign up to the written newsletter in the description below. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't. And we'll see you next time. Thank you, Jelle.
Thanks for watching, guys.
Bye-bye.